This is a picture of a dog shaking its head you might like to do. Started with a background just using big brush strokes of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and then I've also added bits of phthalo blue. You will also want to then put some spattering over the top of that with some white or some light blue, and then just sketch the dog in lightly using a bit of the raw umber. Once you've sketched the dog in, I would start with the darker areas. I've mixed ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Using the flat of your brush, do zigzaggy strokes, backwards and forwards, just to build up a sense of fur. Turn your brush on its side and pull those little bits up to feather those strokes, making wispy strokes to suggest the fur flying behind. I've just then added a little bit of yellow ochre to my burnt sienna. Just at the very base of that dark, there's a little bit of light. Carry on till you're happy with the darkest bits, and with that same little bit of dark, you could actually add that onto the nose. This is a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of brown on there. You might want to add a bit more of the raw umber just to as well. And just around where the mouth is, you can just see little tiny bits of dark. You just want little hints there. Once you've actually done the dark on the dog, you then need to think about the lighter areas. I've just mixed a little bit of burnt sienna in with white, even a tiny bit of yellow ochre if you want, but if it's too bright, you could add a teeny weeny bit of blue to it just to soften it down, but just brush very small brush strokes over the sort of area where the nose is, and turn your brush onto the side just to pull down a little bit of feathering of the fur just over the mouth. So you're going over the dark bits that you've just done. Add little bits of a little bit more burnt sienna if you want to, just to darken the area of that light bit of the dog. Just keep doing that. You can also add a little bit of ultramarine blue as well into the white. You've got two types of light in the dog. There's sort of a browny light in the white, and there's slightly a more blue, or even a little bit of pink as well. So you could do tiny bits of alizarin into that. Just mixing those colours together, just feathering them, using the flat of your brush with small brush strokes. Again, you can just go into the top of the dog or feather slightly. Once you've actually done some of the dog with the burnt sienna and white, you won't want to think about the lighter areas. You've got quite a lot of light on the top of the dog by its mouth and under its chin. I've used white. You could mix a tiny bit of yellow ochre into it if you like, or even a tinsy bit of burnt sienna to begin with. And you're going to try and get this sort of fluffing, this little fluff on the fur. So you want to get your brush and almost create a sort of arc of light coming off the dog as though it's shaking its head. You can go around the ear as well, if you can see how I'm feathering on the ear, and also into the neck itself. I've already done a little bit more on the neck in terms of the same thing on the nose, a bit of burnt sienna and white in the lighter areas as well. And then you're going to use the white, or the white with a tiny bit of yellow ochre, and just put those areas around the dog, as you can see. Once you've done the lighter areas on the dog, you may need to go back in with the darks again, just to put some more strokes of fur coming up over where the light. So you want to get your burnt sienna and your ultramarine blue again, and just with the edge of your brush, just pull that up, and even put that around the other side, as though the bit of the face of the dog. Just you can just see the edge of it beyond the light of the fur there. Once you've used your big brush, you may want to just go in with a small round brush just to put some little details of light on. I found it easier to use that, just to put a little bit more careful detail. And again, you can just feather that out. I'm almost whispering with my brush very, very carefully just to pull it out occasionally. So I'm hardly touching the board at all. And then I'm sort of just scribbling a little bit as well with the brush. So giving little hints of light. Don't make them too specific. And then once you've done that, you may want to just put a little bit on the nose, around the nose I should say, going back in with a little bit of dark. I like the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue, to put the little spots in where you've got the dark bits in the dog's nose. With your little brush, you can also just put some dabs of white to follow the curve of the lines you've already put on the light of the fur, so it looks like bits of droplets of water being shaken off the dog as it's shaking its head. You can also use just careful little dots to go on the top of the dog's fur where the dark area is. I did this initially with the brush itself. You can see a little bit further down that I'll do it with a bit of spattering, but just use your brush just to put a few more spots of light around the dog. After you've used a little bit of white on your brush, I've actually used a little bit of ultramarine blue and white just to scribble in some other bits of light in there, just to make it look, again, a little bit more like the dog's been shaking its head. So it's not just light or white bits coming off, but it's a little bit more colour. You'll notice as well on the dog, can you see I've also put the same colour into the top of the nose where there's a little bit of light. You can just see I've added that in, and I've also added that in under its chin as well. So you've got those sort of bright burnt siennas and whites in there, but also a little bit of ultramarine and white. It gives it quite a nice feel to it. You'll notice as well that I've done the collar in some alizarin, putting little blocks of colour in but not a line. What I would do is do that and then put a little bit of fur over the top. So this is about the end of the picture. You can see at the very, very end I've actually put on a glaze using a little bit of cadmium yellow, just a very small amount, because cadmium yellow is more opaque, but it just gives it a really lovely warm glow. And at the very, very, very end, I put little hints of white back over the top of the glaze to give it a really lovely luminous effect. I hope your painting goes really well.